and our friend and colleague from the St. Louis area, Cannon Hughie, kind enough to hop on the line with us, despite ongoing homeschooling and all sorts of different scenarios happening at the house. Kind enough to give us some
That's
time.
right.
What's going on?
Yep, getting some curveballs here, Nader, without the sports, keeping me busy, keeping me active.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, I'm aware. First of all, you know, you. I think of you as a Kobe fan, but I know mad respect for Michael Jordan. I mean, how could you not?
Oh yeah. No, I think I'm a huge Kobe fan. Kobe was our Michael, really. I mean,
Yeah.
my memories of Jordan are really kind of that Game 6 shot over Russell there. I mean, that's the vivid one. Other than that, it's just kind of story. So we got the tail end, and then I mean, to me, Kobe and LeBron are the two in our era, and I think there's no denying that Kobe had that same kind of winning attitude that MJ had, and obviously in the doc you see that even more so. And I don't know if you heard like the murmurs or whatever you want to call them about people, or I think Jordan himself said people are going to look at me as a hole after seeing this, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, that was kind of known before. In the first three episodes, I haven't really seen anything that I didn't feel like I already knew about just his overall intensity and just wanting to rip your heart out to win. I mean, that minute restriction in episode 1 and 2 when he was just like when he lost Jerry Krause or when he spoiled just over them wanting to get in the lottery there, and he
Hmm.
was trying to get over that. What was it, 7 minutes a half or something like that?
Yeah,
And
ridiculous.
you think about superstars today. I mean, how many people would fight to that extent to play in games when you're 30 and 50 at that point?
Yeah, and that story from I think that was episode 2 where John Paxson hits the shot and they lock
Yeah.
Jerry Krause out of the post game celebration. Like, can you imagine that little waddling guy coming in and like banging on the door to try to get in? And Jerry, it's funny because I've gotten a little bit different perspective. Mike Claiborne did an interview with Clarence Gaines, who was an assistant. He was Jerry's assistant, his general manager, and I found it fascinating because Jerry, he also was kind of the architect behind building this whole thing, and he did bring in Phil Jackson,
Mhm.
and he did bring
Yeah.
in Doug Collins. Like, so he definitely deserves some respect. But man, towards the end, like what he did, it's just a shame because ultimately, I think the best is yet to come in this docuseries. But man, you think
Yeah.
about what could have happened. Like, how many more championships could this team have won? And maybe it's not that simple, but it certainly would have been entertaining to watch at least for another 5 years.
Yeah, and I mean that's the perfect kind of. Obviously, at that point, we were what 8 years old, 9 years old. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot imagine that in 2020 someone blowing up that sort of team just over pettiness. I mean, you're talking about blowing up Michael Jordan's Bulls, and I think he said in the first episode too, he's like, "We have the right to defend this championship until we lose it." And Jerry Krause didn't even let that happen. Phil Jackson said, "What? Even if you go 82-0, you're done no matter what." It's like he does deserve a ton of credit for putting the team together and putting the pieces together and making the trades he did. But at the same time, it's like, how do you break up arguably the greatest team ever? And that is next level Hall of Fame pettiness right there.
And I guess the hatred for Jerry Krause was established pretty early on. Like after the Bulls' second championship of their first three-peat, Jerry was getting booed by the Chicago
Yeah.
fans.
And Jordan was what? Was that his second year when they did the minute restriction? And he made it pretty clear that was when he personally like lost respect for Jerry. And you see all the time he's just, I mean, constantly. So that's what 10 plus years of just getting ragged on by Michael Jordan. I guess I can.
Hey, Jerry, you going to
The
take some
layup
layups
line
with us?
comment.
We'll lower
What's
the
that?
rims. We'll lower the rims if you want to
Yeah.
come.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And he's always just trying to like little Jerry's just trying to like poke his head into the conversations, and MJ just shoots him down every time.
Oh man, it's too
I
funny.
guess that would wear on you a little bit, I guess. And you got Pippen apparently berating him. So I mean, but still. And
Yeah,
I
but
don't even remember how. what the next steps were in that rebuild. I'm sure they'll touch on that, but obviously it didn't work out.
Here's another
But
thing, though, that people forget about Pippen. After
yeah,
his second year in the league, he had a devastating back injury and needed to have back surgery. And
yeah,
so at the time when he was given that, and the docuseries does not bring this information to light at all, but he had what some could be look at as a career-ending back injury, so his
yeah,
future was very uncertain. And the Bulls
yeah.
gave him a 6-year deal, which at the time it looked like pretty lucrative, but he was also being warned by several people, from what I've come to understand in the organization, and even his agent, saying that the television deals and all these things, like the salary cap in Pippen's second year, I think was like $7 million. And then it jumped
Right.
to 12, and then it jumped exponentially higher as they got into the 90s. But Pippen, that deal right out of the gates was almost a security bridge for him because
Oh
of the
yeah.
back situation and because the cap wasn't that high. So, again, a lot of things in this film, they're not truly explained. They're just meant to exploit maybe
Yeah.
some things.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I know, yeah, Reinsdorf said, which, at this point, hindsight 2020, said that he told Scotty not to take the deal. Okay. But, and then you're also not going to renegotiate those deals. So, and he's apparently loyal to a fault with because you got what? Who's the GM in White Sox? I'm blanking on his name right now.
Kenny Williams.
Yeah. Reinsdorf is one of those guys that seems to be just fiercely loyal to his GMs, and I mean Jerry Krause is a perfect example of that. How are you gonna? And how did? And I'm not sure if this happened or it'll be touched on, but I do wonder if MJ ever went to Reinsdorf and said specifically, "Hey, it's either Jerry or it's me." And
Yeah.
if he did do that, how does Jerry Reinsdorf pick Jerry Krause over the most legendary athlete ever?
It
But
is.
who knows if that conversation was even had.
Yeah, it's a great question because it does seem like Jerry Reinsdorf was able to play this villain without actually being the bad cop. He
Yep.
kind of got to disguise himself as the owner, but then he would send in his guys to go handle the dirty work. And
Yeah.
yet he was able to keep his image at least somewhat clean. So
Yep.
there is more blood on Jerry Reinsdorf's hands here than I think they're alluding to in this docuseries. And they just show Krause and some of the other prominent figures in the worst light, where really they were just doing what Jerry Reinsdorf was telling them to do. And when your boss tells you to do something, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. No, I agree. 100%.
So Dennis Rodman, I mean, what an interesting figure. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine like those. Can you imagine in today's world if a player asked for a vacation to go to Vegas for 48 hours and probably do a bunch of drugs and get hammered and party with strippers? Like, what an interesting. Like, how would that fly in 2020?
And just his skill set. I think they whipped out a stat last night where he had one game where he had 22 rebounds and 0 points.
Yes.
I mean, there's not, and I mean, obviously probably the greatest rebounder of all time. But back to the Krause thing, I mean, got to give the guy credit bringing in that piece. I mean, he was obviously not as big as Pippen in terms of his contribution, but I mean, it's hard to deny that. Who knows if they win 6 without that aspect of just enforcing and doing the dirty work for MJ and Scotty. And I love that. What was that game? He got kicked out for doing something to the ref.
Yeah.
And then just went into MJ's hotel room and asked for a cigar, and MJ was like, "Hey, he never apologized or anything. We just kind of sat there and talked." But I knew that was his way, his odd way of apologizing was just going in to get tanked and rip cigars with MJ in his hotel.
It was so funny. I mean, and MJ totally got it. And that's the important aspect of, I guess, like being a cohesive team, is that MJ knew that Dennis was never going to come up and like get on his knees and apologize. Yeah. But the fact that he knew that Dennis coming to knock on that door, and it really led to the turnaround, according to that they were able to win all these games after Dennis sort of re-engaged. And then Jordan himself flying to Las Vegas and getting Rodman out of the hotel room and Carmen Electra hiding behind the couch. I mean, can you imagine this scene? And then when MJ's like, this is BS, I got to get back into shape because Rodman, took a 48-hour, what was supposed to be 48, turned into much longer vacation to Las Vegas. And then, I mean, one of the all-time most classic scenes is Rodman ripping a Miller Lite and then hopping on his motorcycle with no helmet, and off he goes with his posse to Vegas for his 48-hour adventure, which turned into like 80 hours.
And shout out, now you mention that reminds me, shout out to Craig Sager. You notice that little piece in there?
Yes,
In the $20 bill.
He handed him
a legend.
to pay your fine.
Ageless Craig Sager, too. I swear that guy looked, I mean, rest in peace, Craig, but he didn't seem to age much at all. Because he looked pretty much exactly the same back then. Even further back.
How much I would have loved to seen a blood test on Dennis Rodman when they were running those Indian drills where, like, the Indian runner where, the guy from the back has to go to the top and you got to chase and catch him. And Dennis Rodman is just pacing the entire team. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if his levels of cocaine were, like, through the roof and he was just, like, running on pure adrenaline.
Couple lines deep in Game 7 of the NBA Final.
Oh, my gosh.
30 rebounds.
It's crazy because it doesn't seem like that long ago. I mean, 1997, 1998, and yet to think about some of these things that they were getting away with back then and how that would translate into today's world of sports, like, it's just two completely different elements.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny. I mean, if you knew nothing about Dennis Rodman at all and just watched how he played basketball, you'd probably be like, that guy does a lot of cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
The picture of him just straight vertical. Have you seen that one where he's like just totally laying out for a rebound, like totally vertical to the floor, probably 5 feet off the ground? It's like that guy was running with his neon hair on fire.
He put 33s in his hair when Scottie Pippen returned to the team finally. Even down to, like, the level of detail of him understanding, like, the spin off a Karl Malone shot and how to get that rebound. I mean, it was so in-depth and so almost, like, absurdly addictive that I think that's just how he carries himself. You almost have to be a maniac to understand how to gather those rebounds like he did. I mean, that stat about the 20 rebounds and no points for the consecutive games, and then the next closest was Marcus Camby with 2. It tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, and I mean, Jordan, it's, again, just a mix of different personalities. You had MJ, the killer, Scotty kind of more reserved but tactical, and then you had Dennis Rodman who would just go out and I do think he gets a bad-ish rap. I mean, he's obviously had his issues and all that, but MJ touched on it. The guy was a basketball genius, in Michael Jordan's opinion, and clearly put the work in, clearly studied tape, like you mentioned, knowing the intricacies of rebounding and how the ball bounces off the rim. Like, some people just look at him as a joke. I mean, and he was definitely a personality, to say the least, but he's, I mean, again, best rebounder in NBA history, in my opinion. I don't know how you can kind of, he's up there. I don't know if number one, but he's definitely got him in the conversation. It's just best pure out ever.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, his ferociousness in going up. I mean, some of those tip drills that he was out rebounding another guy was like 3 or 4 times in the air, just relentless. Like, that's exhausting. Anybody who's ever played even a pickup game of basketball, like, rebounding to that extent is
just rebounding in general. It's probably the most exhausting part of basketball.
Yeah.
And not to mention, I mean, rolling ankles and landing wrong. Like, I mean, I don't remember him having any prolonged, really bad injuries. I could be wrong on that, but I mean, durability aspect there too, as it seemed to be there.
I remember vividly Coach G, when we played for the Nuggets, yelling at you to rebound the damn basketball and get it to Luke. Rebound the ball, get it to Luke.
When's the last dance about the Morrison Woods Nugget
Well,
doc coming out?
I think Art Zeiss was our Dennis Rodman. He definitely took a few 48-hour trips to
Yeah,
wherever.
you fit. Yeah,
Oh man.
running straight into the door after a missed block attempt. I remember that one vividly. Didn't
Oh
have the
my
brakes
god.
on that night. Did not have the brakes on.
What my first real memory of the Bulls, honestly, if I'm being honest, is the '98 champion. Is this championship where
Yeah.
they beat the Jazz? That's kind of like that's really my most distinct memory, and really buying into Rodman. I mean, the montage of the different color hairs he had. I mean, I had a Rodman jersey. My sister sent me a text last night that was like, "Remember that Rodman jersey you used to always wear?" And then I was like, "Rodman for Halloween one year." Like, she was like, "What a role model."
Was it the Dallas Mavericks '69 jersey that David Stern disallowed?
No, it was a
Which it
Bulls.
actually happened apparently.
He wouldn't let that one fly.
Yeah, they wouldn't let the '69 Mavericks jersey fly.
Oh, that's too bad. It would have sold like hotcakes. I'm sure there were some custom jerseys well, maybe if you could get them back then. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Definitely the Jazz in that whole series is my best memory of Michael Jordan.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got Space Jam too, obvious classic. But yeah, I remember in my backyard as early as I started playing basketball, I was always Jordan, always that crossover fadeaway. I mean, uh, in terms of like vivid memories, like you said, though, yeah, that iconic. I think both of those Jazz series I can remember, fairly clearly, and just my parents are not basketball fans by any means, but the way everyone was tuned into that, people that really weren't even big sports fans or who I would consider sports fans, I just remember that era, that time, everyone was watching the Bulls. And if you didn't have a team, you're cheering for Jordan. And I haven't really seen that since.
Yeah, he had the it factor. I think Tiger Woods has the it factor, and
Yep,
people are
really,
always
for
like,
sure.
why can't LeBron be like Michael Jordan? I'll be honest with you. Watching this docu-series makes me hate LeBron even more.
Oh, yeah. No, LeBron is not doing, like I said, the 30 and 52 Bulls to get in the playoffs. I don't see LeBron yelling at the GM and coach to give him an extra minute on his minute restriction. I think LeBron is sitting out that season, enjoying his red wine, doing Instagram stories of him rapping along to some song no one cares about. There's just no. Kobe is definitely our MJ. I don't even think it's a debate skill set wise. I think, and this is just a classic sports debate that's you could just talk into the ground, but I mean, I think it's clear there's very, very real differences between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. I mean,
Yeah, there's no question.
8 point, didn't he have an 8 point finals game, LeBron? From what I remember,
I know that
with the Mavs, the
I know that
disappearing
LeBron
act.
has lost several finals. I know Michael never lost a finals.
Yeah, and then 8 point game. Can you imagine Michael Jordan scoring 8 points in the finals? No.
No, not at all.
Well,
And I
Kobe
also
was
have this vivid memory of LeBron when he lost before he went to the Heat against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, him ripping off that jersey in
Oh yeah.
frustration. And, like, I just could never see Michael to do a publicity stunt of that nature where he's, like, ripping off his Bulls jersey
No, there's
knowing
no.
that it was the end. And, frankly, he didn't have to because his last game in a Bulls uniform, he was soaked in champagne. Um,
Yeah.
Hey, Gary, before we let you go, can you? I don't know if we have enough time, but in like 3 minutes, can you tell that story about the night before DK died? I guess I didn't really realize that you were in Chicago for that.
Yeah. So my babysitter at the time up in Wisconsin, she used to watch my sister and I. Ended up, well, it was actually when I was a lot younger. She ended up marrying Matt Morris, so my family obviously kept in touch with her. And whenever they would go into Chicago or Milwaukee, we would kind of poke up and say hi to Matt, and her name is Heather. We also knew Rick Hummel pretty well, the legend himself, Kamish, one of my dad's really good friends was his sister was dating him at the time. So whenever they were in Chicago or Milwaukee, we tried to poke up and kind of get the inside access, if you call it that, to the team, kind of get around them at the hotel, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the night DK unfortunately passed, my dad and I were up there going to the Cardinals Cubs up at Wrigley as we did, and yeah, we were at the Westin there, right across from the Hancock. Kind of meeting the players. I actually have a picture with young Albert Pujols from that night, and me with my puka shells, looking like an absolute twerp. But so yeah, we get met Albert, Steve Klein, a bunch of the other players, obviously Matt, and Matt kind of, as he always was gracious with his time, spent a lot of time with us, and said, "Hey, I got to poke out to dinner. I'm supposed to meet Daryl." And I remember vividly him mentioning, "Hey, like, has Daryl come down yet?" I forget who he was with at the time. I don't even think it was a player. I think it was some sort of coach or something like that. And side note, I did see Mitchell Page ripping some scotch at the bar that night as well. But yeah, pretty eerie remembering Matty Moe asking, "Where's Daryl? Where? I mean, has he come down yet?" And then obviously the next day, being at Wrigley, no one warming up, and then of course Girardi comes out, and I remember it being an eerie. I mean, besides that, it was kind of still in that 9/11 window, so everyone was really kind of wondering what was going on, and then obviously Girardi gave out and gave that speech that we all remember so well and did it gracefully. But yeah, crazy experience.
Wow, I can't remember. I can't imagine being at Wrigley with Joe Girardi announcing the cancellation of the game. He had ties to both the Cubs and Cardinals organizations, and that's got to be just crazy. I mean, I remember exactly where I was. I was on the river with my dad that day. We were boating and stopped to have lunch and somewhere in Illinois, and it was a national Fox game that
Yeah,
Cubs Cardinals broadcast, and you just knew something was not right. And we poked in. Place was packed where we had lunch, and sure enough, Joe Girardi up there giving the announcement that the game was canceled, and later to
yeah,
find
that's
out that DK had died. That's just crazy. I can't believe you were there.
phones. Yeah, no, it was pre-cell phone, so it was kind of everyone was truly wondering what was going on, and everyone's just kind of throwing things out there. I do remember just in the crowd wise, the whole terrorism possibility thing was kind of oddly enough gaining traction.
Yeah.
Because that was the day we lived in at that point. But yeah, no, it was crazy. We actually went that morning to kind of see the players off onto the bus and see Matt and Heather one last time, and obviously didn't see Daryl. And I remember at the time, I mean, Daryl was a huge part of that team. I was looking forward to potentially meeting him, getting a pick, whatever. But yeah, definitely crazy. And Matt and Daryl were, very, very, very close too. And I remember just hearing how hard Matt took that, and I mean, I can't even imagine something like that. I know obviously Mike Mooney too, really close with him, the whole team. I mean, he was definitely a leader on that squad. But yeah, definitely one of the craziest, most coincidental experiences of my life for sure.
That's nuts. Well, Cannon, good to catch up with you. We'll do it again soon, and always a privilege to have you on
Yeah,
Springfield
man,
Airwaves.
absolutely. Appreciate the time, man.
All right, we'll talk to you in a bit.
Adios.
See you, bud.